Okay, what we're going to look at in this video is, first of all, how to tell if you've got an equation is actually a function. And so typically these equations will have two variables. And so starting out, they're almost always x and y. So elements in the domain are denoted with an x, and elements in the range are denoted with the y. Now, later on, they'll mix up the letters. They might use a U and V or an A and a B, but in the beginning, it's X and Y. So, first of all, let's reacquaint ourselves with this symbol. This is the plus or minus symbol. So, if you see something like this, you actually have two answers. One is if you use the plus symbol, and then the second answer is if you use the minus symbol. So this has two solutions. Okay. So an equation with x's and y's is a function if and only if you can rewrite it in the form y on the left-hand side equals something over here that's a mixture of x's, symbols, numbers, without, and that's the big thing, without the plus or minus symbol. Okay, so that is a function. I've got y by itself on the left-hand side, and I have a mixture of x's, numbers, and symbols, but there's no plus or minus sign. This is not a function, because I've got that plus or minus symbol. Okay, so is it always going to be that easy? No, it's not. Sometimes the plus or minus symbol comes from it, and it's not explicitly shown to us in the equation. So first we have to understand the difference between what's that equal to? And the answer is 4. Some people will say it's 4 and negative 4. No, it is not. The square root of a number is defined to be whatever the positive one is. But now, what is the solution to this particular problem? Well, if I solve this for y, I can get to y by taking square roots of both sides, because it's y square, and the square root of both sides will, as long as I do the same thing to both sides, then I'm okay. A square root undoes the square, and so that gets me to y. But when you take even roots of both sides, which in this case I have, it gives you 2 selections. So y is equal to 4 or negative 4. And of course, if we go back to the original equation, we see that 4 squared is equal to 16. And if y is negative 4, then negative 4 all squared is also 16. So if we take even roots of both sides, we get 2 possibilities. Now, that's not the case with odd roots. If we take odd roots of both sides, we only have one answer. So what's the solution? Or yeah, what's the solution to this? Well, I have to solve that for y. It's raised to the third power, so to solve it for y, I will take cubed roots of both sides. So a cubed root will undo something to the third power. Since I'm taking odd roots, a cubed root is an odd root, I only get one answer. So here I get back to y, and the cubed root of negative 27 is negative 3. What is the solution to that? Well, to find out what y is, since it's y to the fourth, I'll take fourth roots of both sides. But when you take even roots of both sides, you have two possibilities. And so y is equal to plus or minus, and the fourth root of 16 is 2. So y is equal to 2 or negative 2. Okay, so is that a function? No, it's not, because what do I have to try and do? I have to try and get y on the left-hand side, and then what's over here is a mixture of x's and symbols without the plus or minus sign. To get y by itself, I would need to take square roots of both sides. When you're taking even roots of both sides, you have two possibilities there. So no, that is not a function. Is that a function? Well, yes, that is, because in order to get y by itself, here I will take cubed roots of both sides, and taking odd roots, which a cubed root is, only leaves me with one choice. So y is equal to the cubed root of x squared. I have y is equal to a mixture of x's, symbols, numbers, and I do not have the plus or minus sign. Is that a function? Well, yes, it is, because I can write it with y on the left-hand side. I just have to swap sides. And I don't have the plus or minus sign over here. Is that a function? Well, can I write it with y by itself on the left-hand side and a mixture of x's and symbols and numbers without the plus or minus sign on the other side? Well, yeah, I can. First of all, I can swap sides. So I'm just going to swap sides of that equation. Then I'm going to add x to both sides. And if I add x to both sides, I get that. So I have y by itself on the left-hand side and a mixture of x's, symbols on this side, but no plus or minus side. So yes, that is a function. So now how do I evaluate functions? Well, if we have a function, then we can write it this way with the y, but instead of the y, we can also instead write f evaluated at x, where the lowercase f means function. Now, that is the most common way to write it in this style. You could also use the letter G. So if you have two functions, it's usually the first is f, the second is G, and then H, lowercase, or you could have capital F. This is the most common way. So what we also want to remember is these things are interchangeable. Y is the same thing as f of x. And we're going to really need to keep that in mind right throughout the rest of the chapter. Now, suppose I want to evaluate. So now I don't have to worry about this notation. They're the same thing. What is f evaluated at -1? What's f evaluated at -x? What's f evaluated at x plus 1? What is the negative of f of x? Let's see if we could find all of those. Well, for this one, if what is inside the parentheses is just a number, then we want to rewrite the equation But wherever you see the x, replace it with -1 in parentheses. So 5 times -1 is -5, and -5 minus -1 is -6. So that's my answer to that one. Now, what is f evaluated at -x? Well, if you've got something different than a number, then here's the best way we can do this. Here's my original formula. So now if I want to evaluate it with something a bit more complicated than just a number, rewrite f as it was, but without the x. And wherever the x was in the formula, put parentheses in. Okay, so now what do we want here? Well, we want to find f evaluated at -x. So this is what we're looking at now. So now inside the blank parentheses, I'm just going to put -x. And then I'm going to work this out. 5 times -x is -5x, then -1. And of course, I cannot combine those, so that's the answer to what f evaluated at -x is. Okay. Now, what about f evaluated at x plus 1? Well, it's going to be the same thing. I'll go to the original formula, and I rewrite it without the x, and I put blank parentheses where the x was. So now what do we want this time? We want f evaluated at x plus 1. So you can take a different color pen if you like, and write in x plus 1 there. Now, this is a correct answer, but you're not going to see it like that in the back of the book. You're not going to see it like that as a multiple choice question, selection on a multiple choice exam. It's going to be written without any parentheses. So we have to multiply the 5 through first because there's parentheses. 5 times x is 5x plus 5 times 1, then -1. And 5 minus 1 is 4. So the answer that you would see in the back of the book is that. Now what about this guy? The negative of f of x. Well, the negative of f of x is not -5x minus 1. You can't just negate the first part of the equation. It's the negative of the entire equation. So get into the habit of writing negative and then big parentheses. And then inside the parentheses, you put the equation for f of x. And the equation for f of x is 5x minus 1. Now, this is a correct answer, but it's not how you would see it in a multiple choice test or in the back of the book. It'd be written without parentheses. So how is this written without parentheses? The negative sign has to be applied to every term inside here. So we have -5x and then minus -1, which is plus 1. So that's our answer. Okay. All right, so I'll finish up this video. This one, and let's find out what these are. Okay, so what I would like you to do now, if you're watching this video, is pause the video and work each of these out as far as you can get them, and then press play and watch. Because if you just watch without trying them yourself, you're not going to be getting the practice you need for the test. So if you saw this on a test, you would have to do the whole thing by yourself from start to finish. You need to practice doing these by yourself from start to finish. So put the video on hold, get each of these out to the final answer with no parentheses, and then play the video and check your answer. Okay, that is going to be the best way to prepare for a test. So go ahead and put the video on hold. Okay, so now we're going to work these out. So now everyone's worked them out on their own sheet of paper, so I can go through this fairly quickly. So if it's just a number, then wherever you see the X, replace the X with the number in parentheses. So that's a correct answer, but of course we have to give it as the number. Now, usually I work through things from left to right, but if we just go from right to left, I got plus 4. What's that number going to be? Well, negative 3 times negative 3 is plus 9. And now, what is this going to be? And it's really important that we understand here, if you multiply that 2 through and say that's going to be negative 6 all squared, that is wrong. Order of operations. What takes precedence? Multiplying or raising something to a power? The power takes precedence. You must do the power first. So we must do this first. So the 2 is just coming along for the ride. It's going to be 2 times what I've circled there. And what is negative 3 all squared? It's positive 9. So I'll have 18 plus 9 plus 4. 18 plus 9 is 27, and 27 plus 4 should be 31. Okay, so if I haven't made a mistake there, I'm getting that this is equal to 31. Okay. Now, what of f evaluated at negative x? Well, again, if it's just a single term like that, everywhere there's an x, I go back and replace it with negative x in parentheses in here. Okay, now that's a correct answer, but I need to have it written without parentheses. So again, if I start at the right side here, I just have plus 4. What's that going to be? Negative 3 times negative x. It's going to be plus 3x. And now what about this? I must do that first. So what's going to happen to the negative sign? Because the power is even, the negative sign is going to go away. So negative x in parentheses all squared is just x squared. So this is going to be 2 times x squared. And there's my answer because I can't combine any of those together. All right, for that one comes that. Okay. So now how did you do on the next one? F evaluated at x minus 1. Well, this is one where write the original equation out without the x. And wherever the x is, put blank parentheses. Okay, now what did we want? We wanted f evaluated at x minus 1. So put the x minus 1 inside the parentheses. This is a correct answer, but you're not going to see it like that on the exam. So, again, let's start from the right and move leftwards. Okay, what's that going to be without parentheses? Well, it's going to have negative 3 times x plus negative 3 times negative 1, which is positive 3. Now, what about this? Order of operations, we've got to do that first. So the 2 is going to stay on the outside. And what is x minus 1 all squared? Well, it's x minus 1 times itself. And so now moving down, I can put those together. That's going to be a plus 7. And then I have a minus 3x there. And I need to do the inside of this first. So we should know how to FOIL. I'll have x squared minus x minus another x, so minus 2x, and then negative 1 times negative 1 is plus 1. So that's what the inside is. And then I've got to take my 2 and multiply it all the way through. So that's what I do. I'll have 2x squared, then 2 times negative 2x, then 2 times 1. Then, okay, I don't have any parentheses, but I do have to collect any common terms. So I have a 2x squared term there. I don't have any more x squared terms. Okay. Now I've got an x term there, and I've got an x term there. Negative 4x minus 3x is negative 7x. And then I've got a plus 2 plus 7. So that'll be a plus 9. And that is my answer. Okay. And then finally, what is the negative of f of x? Well, the negative of f of x is the negative of the entire formula for f of x. Now, this is correct, but I have to write it without parentheses. So there's a negative sign out front, so it must be applied to every term. So I get negative 2x squared, the negative of negative 3x, and negative 4. So that's my answer for that one. Okay, so did you get the same answers? If you did, fantastic. If you didn't, do you see what went wrong? And you understand what went wrong, and you won't do that again in the future, won't make that mistake again in the future. If you did, equally fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to stop there, and that ends today's lesson.